We're excited to have you all. For those of you that weren't here prior, this is our virtual reality panel. Today we will be talking about how virtual reality is transforming the technology industry. This will be moderated by the lovely Sydney Skybetter. And let's go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves. So we'll just share the mics, pass them down, and I'll go ahead and start. I'm Janessa White. I'm the founder of VR Dribble. I'm also a part of Women in VR, which was started by Julie. And I am currently doing my best to create content for virtual reality. So I think Katie mentioned a game that we were building, Arslanga, which is running his artwork into the virtual reality space in a puzzle way, kind of playing on some empathy ties with he as the artist. And then I also have a film, a 360 film that's premiering this weekend, a big encounter on Sunday at 11:30. So very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, give it up. So I'm Sydney Skybetter. I'm going to deliberately not introduce myself in any great depth and instead pass the mic to our fellow panelists.
Hello everyone. My name is Jay Sines. I'm the founder of Boise Virtual Reality Project, and I'm the digital marketing manager for Oliver Russell. My focus is really encouraging people to create VR content and getting out in the community, educating people about VR and teaching them about the tools they need to start working in the emerging field of VR. So I've been lucky enough to work with local hospitals and 5-year-olds that are learning the program already. So it's been a really interesting ride. Hopefully I have some interesting things to add to the panel.
I'm Ryan Zim. I'm founder of Interface Games. So we're mobile and PC game developers, web developers, and then in the last year and a half we've been involved in VR, and so in 2015, last year, we won 3 awards in VR development, and then this year, 2016, we've won 1 award in game development, and so we have a consistent track of winning awards in VR and game development right here, based out of Boise, and so we've been doing some hiring and whatnot, so doing a lot of training as well. We have a series at the public library, so and also running a YouTube channel with a lot of VR and game development tutorials on it. So in addition to doing game development and VR development, also doing everything we can to reach out to the community and get you guys involved in VR development and game development, and just kind of spread the message that, hey, we can. Here in Boise, there's in addition to myself, there's plenty of good examples of game developers who are growing and getting a lot of success and traction. So it's a field that's growing here in Boise, and I'm excited to be here and talk about VR and games.
My name's David Cleverton, and I'm the owner of DTX Creative and also 360 Immersive. We've done content creation and digital marketing in the area for a little over 15 years, and about a year and a half ago, got into the VR business, got excited enough about it that we actually started a new company called 360 Immersive, dedicated towards VR, AR, all the immersive technologies that's available to us. We're hugely excited about the potential. We're also hugely excited about the community effort that we'd like to see Boise and the surrounding area become somewhat of the hub of this new technology. It's just an exciting time, and we're glad to be part of it.
I'm Julie. I'm a producer at Emblematic Group. We make real-time rendered VR experiences. We're based in LA. We do a lot of immersive journalism stuff. And I also co-founded the Shift Foundation, which creates, essentially creates opportunities for just diverse views and perspectives in VR, AR, and MR, and most of which center around women in VR at this point.
My name is Matthew. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a music manager, and one of my clients, Ben Soley, we created a virtual reality app for him called Vanishing Point, and are looking to use it as a storytelling mechanism for musicians.
You're also the owner of a phenomenal pair of socks. I don't know if they're good to talk
Actually,
about.
I have to give credit to Sally Lewis, who's here right now, who bought these for me for Christmas. So.
Muscle talk, man. We're done here. So what I'd like to do, just sort of broad strokes, is I've got a couple questions for our panelists, and then I'd love to sort of open up for a conversation, not only between the panel, but indeed with all of us nerds here in the room. Just to quickly start, I'm going to ask our panelists to share in 1 minute or less your proudest VR project or initiative that you want to talk about more. So 1 minute or less proudest VR moment.
Sitting in a room with a team of 9 people who have never seen or experienced virtual reality before, who are helping me build this game, and seeing the pure excitement on their faces to embark upon a brand new adventure. That's pretty cool.
I think I'll tell the story of Boise State University, which is I met with a group of students called the Space Broncos and pitched them the idea of creating some VR content. Left for 2 weeks, came back, and they had an entire VR world built, a huge museum showing all of NASA's, satellites and ships and everything, and it was completely interactive and completely working, and none of them had developed before. So that's pretty amazing.
For me, I think the most rewarding moment I've had as a VR developer is one of my games called Mystery Malfaxis, which is a hands-free mobile VR adventure. I was playing it with a friend of mine who's in a wheelchair, and when he had the VR headset on, and when he started spinning around, his face just lit up, and it doesn't get the opportunity to get out, and so it was really rewarding to see his face just light up and be able to affect somebody's life in a positive way.
I think I'm going to take it from more of an esoteric statement, is that my proudest moment is just to be part of this, to have an opportunity to be, frankly, at the start of something that will ultimately revolutionize not only the way that we entertain, the way that we socialize, the way that we train, the way that we market, but you just don't see that very often. Maybe at the advent of the internet could be another milestone. Maybe when somebody popped up with this thing called the iPhone and they had this app thing. But we're at a point now that you can get on this train and ride it, and it will be the start of something really big. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to look back at it and say it was a hell of a ride.
My proudest moment would be last year with Oculus has a really big conference every year called Oculus Connect, and so another group that I work with called VRG, we ran kind of like a scholarship program where Oculus gave out, they subsidized the cost of the actual conference fee, and we had a girl. It was her first time ever. One of the recipients. It was her first time ever traveling. So she was from Canada and she flew to LA. And it was her first time ever traveling, and she was so excited about it. And she now is like a very she just all she does is like develop VR, and so that's probably my proudest moment because her coming to Connect and getting connected with all those people was a big part of that.
Proudest moment, I think would have to be the completion of the Vanishing Point. Coming in as a manager of music and not really looking to jump into the world of tech initially, being able to go from idea to finished product and kind of navigating it and learning as we go was incredible.
Thank you. So I guess just sort of to broaden the conversation a little bit, I'm sort of parroting Clay Shirky here, but there's a lot of conversation around this sort of ambivalence of VR as a platform, or technology as a platform more broadly. So for example, I don't know how many of you follow pornography on the internet, but for example, YouPorn, if I'm not mistaken, announced they're launching a VR channel, and by the same token, we've heard all of these very empowering stories about how VR is used for good, for radical empathic purposes and the like. So I guess I want to sort of first posit that VR as a technology is neither good nor bad, but rather a function of how it's programmed to perform, right? So I wonder, my question for the panelists, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the good and the bad, or the ambivalence of this technology. Like, what are some of the gains of the tech versus some of the risks?
Well, I'll get started. One example that could be used for good is after winning some awards in VR, the state had contacted me, the Department of Health and Welfare, I believe. And the problem is that last year in Idaho, I believe, don't quote me on these numbers, this is from memory, but there was 4 recovery centers that were built in Idaho, and the smallest city that got one was Emmett, which has 6,000 or 8,000 people. So in Idaho, there's a bunch of people in rural areas and cities smaller than Emmett who want to have access to a facility like a recovery center, and they can't because they just don't live in a big enough city. Again, Idaho only built, I think, 4 of these last year, or maybe it was in the last few years or whatnot. So the state contacted me about possibly building a virtual reality recovery center so that people in rural areas could use, if you have an addiction and you want to, you can instantly join a group of a lot of friends who are all with you in real time in a center, in a support group, and you have real time support. So that's an example. I've had talks with the state about that, and that's something that's exciting that could be used for good. And there's also plenty of examples of where VR is being used for therapy. So that's one example here in Idaho that could be applicable if we could. The problem is getting these VR headsets to the people in all the rural areas.
If you guys watched the documentary that we showed here, The Power of Glove, it's actually kind of a similar story to virtual reality, that these people came together and developed this piece of hardware without really taking into consideration the content that would pair with it. And I feel like virtual reality is at a similar state where we have the hardware, but the content is coming second. And because of that, there's this real fine divide where we're trying to, it's the Wild West. We're trying to figure out what the rules are, what the guidelines are. I mean, it's a brand new medium of storytelling, and with any new medium, just like film, you don't know what you're doing, and you're filming a train, so it's a really interesting time right now. And so to answer Sydney's question, I think with anything that's brand new, you're going to have people making some really terrible stuff. I don't know if the porn is terrible, I haven't tried it, but I think that's kind of how it goes with anything that's brand new. We're taking baby steps. So on the good end, he mentioned it in his short talk, we have this empathy machine that is really acting as a platform for powerful stories that we've never witnessed before. Project Syria, something that Bruce came out with. You sit in a camp, that this young woman lives in and has lived in for a very long time. That is powerful. That is something that you cannot experience by watching, like Julie said in her talk, you cannot experience by watching a movie or reading an article. It immerses you in a way that is unheard of, and it's powerful. And then conversely, you've got, what is it called, the fleshlight? So you've got the fleshlight while you're watching a simulation with porn, and so there's a very large gap right now. And I think as virtual reality, as we take these baby steps and explore the storytelling mediums, we're gonna have all types that come out that are really powerful and really terrible. That's how it goes.
And I think I'd like to add to that in that one of the interesting things about virtual reality is that unlike a lot of other new technologies that come out, it has a profound ability to affect a person, right? So you can affect a person's heart rate, you can affect the way they feel, you can change kind of their perception. So there is a risk involved when creating content for such a new medium that has that kind of effect. And one of the things that I think could challenge VR as a technology is a flood of really bad experiences hitting the market and people having very negative initial experiences, and then it just kind of becomes this thing that becomes a niche platform where maybe you have hospitals using it because they're able to control the content really well. You got amusement parks that are using it because they're able to do that as well. But then the general public, having had so many bad experiences, really doesn't have an affinity for VR. That being said, I think that we're at a time that's really interesting in this industry because you're looking at a technology that just a few years ago was, only people who were working in, at the academic level or at major Hollywood studios had access to this. And then suddenly, it just became something everyone could have. It was really fast, What was that video from 2012? That you were showing earlier in your talk, that's the VR kit you had in 2012 or Sundance, yeah. And what did something like that run?
What'd you say?
How much was that?
Like, how much did it cost?
Yeah.
Well, it cost, Nani used $700 of her own money, but it was, a lot of it was in kind. But the headset itself was like $50,000.
Right.
So then Palmer Luckey, who then did the Kickstarter for Oculus like 9 months later, like literally built like with duct tape the goggles that they brought to Sundance in 2012. So it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. So it's just suddenly really accessible, and the language needs to be developed, and we have to be a little bit careful with how we develop that language because of that effect that it can have on people.
I think jumping off that, one of the challenges, at least we found, with trying to pitch this idea to Ben Solis' audience, who ranged a little bit older, is virtual reality is something you really have to experience. It's very hard to, it's like, what do they say? Steve Martin quote that says, like, writing about music is like dancing about architecture or something. It's just something that, unless you have, or you're in the, experience itself or have the goggles on, you can't really describe it. I remember the first time I went to Ben's house and he had the Google Cardboard, and he was, before he's been telling me all these ideas, like, it's really cool, you get, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that, and I go, okay, cool. And then he puts it on me and I go, well shit, okay, now I get it. So, there's not a lot of people so far that have really experienced VR, and I think that's gonna be one of the big hurdles, is getting more people to try it and understand it that way.
Let me kick in one. The fundamental aspect of VR, MR, AR is a connection to the content. And it has huge implications for training, for entertainment, for gaming, for everything, virtually everything that we do from a species and a society. The downside is it has a tremendous connection to the content. So my World of Tanks addiction is suddenly tenfold more addictive. The ability though, if we produce good content, and if we take it in the respect that it needs to be not jumped in full, but kind of work through it as a technology and as an industry, it's going to change the world. But there will be, or potentially could be, gaming addictions that are so bad that people have to do the 12-step. For people developing games, that's not a bad thing for you guys. But the word is connection. Fundamentally, there's nothing like VR and then all the augmented technologies coming down the pipeline that connects you to the content. There's nothing like it.
And there's no going back either, right? So we're entering into this time of mixed reality where VR, AR, these are all multiple simultaneous realities that we have to traverse as individuals in our technological era, right? But I want to talk a little bit about how that affects the kind of cultural landscape, or maybe just sort of the broader, let's just talk about the United States for a moment. But again, I'm coming from the dance field, the performing arts, and there's a tremendous amount of fear about VR and associated technologies because, the sort of hypothesis goes that, the New York City Ballet is just going to come up with Nutcracker in VR, and then every dance company in the country that relies on Nutcracker to run its business is going to just implode, right? So I want to talk a little bit about unanticipated consequences of the proliferation of VR. Can you talk a little bit about how VR, and especially if it's successful, how it might affect adjacent or parallel fields?
Well, I think, so I'm on the board with the dance company, and this conversation has come up before, and I think there's one thing, we have to keep in mind when we look at VR as a technology is while you have the connection to the virtual reality content, you don't have the connection to the person sitting next to you. And that's still a very important part of experiencing things, right? So if I'm going to a movie, I don't necessarily want to go to a movie and strap on a VR headset and sit next to Ryan and not say anything to Ryan, you know? The enjoyment of a lot of these experiences, including the Nutcrackers, you know, watching your 7-year-old daughter face light up as she's watching this performance. So there is still, and I think a very, you know, human reaction to VR where it's like, not sure if how invasive I want this technology to be in my life, you know? And so I think that's one thing to consider. That there are a lot of traditional medias like, hey, don't worry, you're safe because there's that connection that has to happen in real life. But it does have the potential to disrupt a lot of industries. And I think that's, you know, that's fair. But things change and like we have to embrace that. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of the people at this panel, what you're seeing is these are all people who are already in industries that are not related to VR. And they're embracing VR and finding ways of utilizing it to create a new kind of connection. And I think that's one key.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think like you were saying, that we're still a long way away from having from VR replacing an experience. You still have a duality of presence. You know you're in a virtual world and another world at the same time, and your mind sort of takes cues from both. But at the same time, I mean, I think that one day that could happen, that it could really replace an experience. But all the same, I think that the way that content makes money has always been the same and always kind of will be the same. It's either like pay-per-view subscription or advertising, or pay-per-view subscription advertising, or like, you know, just straight up commission. And so, you know, I think instead of kind of destroying a theater company or a dance company, it could actually just create an opportunity for them. I think there's a flip side to it. Yeah. No free lunch.
So we're working on a project with Idaho Tourism to capture in 360 video and ultimately generate a series of apps. What the great things about Idaho that you all that live here know that's here, but other people that may want to visit the state either from a commerce standpoint or a tourism standpoint don't. Do we actually think that because we can generate an immersive environment and we can showcase all of the things about Idaho that are wonderful to be here, that people won't want to come here? And the answer is no, because you're not out hiking or you're not out whitewater rafting. You don't get the adrenaline kick. It's just an augmented way of showing something that's here in a better way. It's fundamentally a better way, but it's not a replacement. It's not something that, yeah, in certain cases there might be a question in other industries, but from a marketing standpoint, it's a way to pull people in and motivate them in a way that hasn't been done before.
So I have two last questions, and then actually three, because I have a logistical question. Is somebody going to punch me in the face when our panel's supposed to be over, or like?
Yeah, we'll give you just when they start seeing you as like turkey legs and hands.
Okay.
Great.
Keep me posted on that. So two last questions for the panel, and then I'd love to open it up to the nerd gaggle. Sort of an adjacent question to how VR affects, disrupts other fields. I want to talk specifically about the tech sector. And so, like, South by Southwest was, again, particularly sort of frothy with the VR stuff, and maybe it has been for a little while. I should find different words than frothy. I mean, you know what I mean, right? It's like an exploded sponge cake. But I want to hear from you how VR is affecting the tech field specifically. So, for example, we're seeing all sorts of fascinating things out of, like, Autodesk of all godforsaken places, where they're using, with respect, right? But still, where VR is totally transforming how they consider software development, their production. Like it affects, VR is tapping into every aspect of Autodesk's organization, right? So how, in your mind, is VR going to affect the tech sector?
Oh, okay. I will. Awesome. Well, I think, where do I want to start here? You know, I think one of the key things that we have to keep in mind is that while the technology is developing, people are finding completely new ways of thinking about the technology, right? So you've probably all heard a little bit of something called Magic Leap, right? Nobody knows what Magic Leap is. but our imagination is already starting to run wild. And I could imagine a time when everyone sitting in this room is just having lasers projected in their eyes, and we're all in a shared virtual reality and a shared augmented reality. But on the tool side of things, right, where augmented, and I think augmented reality even more so than VR is going to have a huge effect on the way people design and develop products, is that we can actually now create something at very low cost. You know, if you want to build something that's inside of your imagination, you can download Unreal Engine 4 for free, you know, add some advanced physics, jump into virtual reality and test it out, right? If you're building a new facility for manufacturing, you can build that in virtual reality, test it, look for inefficiencies and try to find them. So what virtual reality and augmented reality are allowing us to do as far as development and implementation of, damn, I cannot say it. And the frothiness of tech is that it's giving us the ability to really create something that we can turn into something real, and we can get into the really small details, right? So if I wanted to go back and build, you know, an ancient computer, I can go in and do that, and then I can zoom in, you know, I can walk up to it and look and see how it works. We can do that with technologies that we've only dreamed of. And I think one of the key things here is kind of the Star Trek effect, right? So you're gonna have a lot of creative people that are creating meaningful VR content that's going to have amazing technologies within it, and that's gonna inspire future generations to make those technologies a reality. So that's, I'll end on that because he snapped.
One way it's definitely changing the, at least, the tech industry is, before in the history of computing, when you wanted to develop an app, you pretty much just got a software developer, .NET developer, or whatever, and you said, hey, let's build this app, and they built it, whether it was for a phone or a PC or whatever. In VR, all of a sudden we have you know, healthcare, education, all these different industries going into VR, and when they need a VR app developed, they say, hey, let's get the software developer to do it. There's all of a sudden a problem because everything in VR has to be 3D. And so the only people who have the knowledge and experience in 3D are game developers. So all of a sudden there's a surge of game developers being taken off of game development projects and being put onto VR development projects, because those are the only people who have the technical qualifications for doing VR development. There's a few exceptions, like Mozilla's working on something called A-Frame, which is like web development for VR, more of HTML style VR development, which is super rad. But as is right now, it's pretty much all 3D game development. There's a few alternatives, but you pretty much are stuck with Unity or Unreal. So there's, so anyways, we're seeing a ton of talent from the game industry being pulled on into VR projects, because those are the only people who have experience working in 3D. And so it's a good, you know, you'll notice a lot of new jobs coming up for Unity developers and stuff like this, and the reason why is because they're disappearing and being taken over here. So that's one way it's affecting the tech industry. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on this one. So from a marketing standpoint, when we hire, we typically, we're in Adobe shop, so we would hire for folks that are Photoshop, After Effects, Illustrator, Premiere, those kind of things. In the last 60 days, we've actually hired 2 more folks, and it's more, do you know Unity? Do you know, if we use Cinema 4D or Max, do you have any C# experience? So that whole dialogue that we have when we're looking for people because of VR and ultimately AR is changing. And I think it's going to be changing for a lot of things. So jobs, that's really the biggest change, is that there's more opportunity for folks that want to reach out and go for it. And anybody that wants to learn Unity or Unreal will probably find a pretty easy place that they can find a job.
I have one more thing I'd like to add to this, is that one of the ways it's changing the tech industry as well is it's changing who the tech industry has to communicate with, right? And what we're seeing is a lot of artists are now being pulled in, because folks like Janessa, who has an amazing theater background, Janessa's skill in theater is part of what makes engaging VR content, right? VR is, it's one of these things where all of these different arts and sciences have to come together to make a meaningful experience because it's duplicating our real experiences. So I think that's another way it's changing. And when you get a dancer in the room with an engineer, who knows what's going to happen? So I think that's changing the industry as well.
I could kiss you on your mouth. So one last question, and let's go down just down the line. What is one question that you always wish that you would get asked at parties but never are?
Why am I so short? Let's see.
This is an email, right?
This wasn't an email. I didn't think about the questions that you put in the email. Busy working. I don't know. You know, I think my favorite topic right now is storytelling in virtual reality because it is such a wide open field and it's really, really fun to talk about. Like Jay said, I have a theater background. That's what I got my degree in. And it is amazing how it translates. It's not film. It's not close-ups. You know, it's not you choosing the specific moment or the specific reaction. It's you inviting the audience to be a part of this wide scope of storytelling. So I think it's a really, really beautiful time to be a storyteller and to find these little pieces that are little stories that can only be told in virtual reality. I think that's a really, really cool thing.
I'm going to get outside of the world of VR here, and the thing I'd like for all of us to try doing is stop asking, what do you do?
Amen.
I'd like you to ask, why do you do what you do? Because, you know, those are the things that really motivate people, and if you're looking to be inspired, ask about somebody else's inspiration, right? Like, the greatest things don't come to us from within. They usually are like floating above us, and if we're lucky, we act as an antenna and we receive it and we're able to put it out in the world. So yeah, like, don't ask people what they do, ask them why they do what they do.
The one question I wish I would get asked at a party: how do I get started in game or VR development?
How about my phone number? You know, fundamentally, we need more communication regarding the industry in general. And it's such a new industry that I wish people would know, somehow know what we do and want to ask about it, because if they ask about it, we can get them excited. If we get them excited, we can expand the industry and expand the technology. But if they don't know, you know, I'm just a guy at the party waiting for somebody to ask him about his phone number. But
I'm really excited about like the concept of like digital dualism versus augmented reality. I don't know if any of you guys know like Nathan Jurgensen's work at all. Yeah, I see some head shakes over there. Yeah, I'm like totally obsessed with everything he says. Basically the whole idea that digital dualism is this idea that you have a separate analog self and a separate digital self, but that in the future these are going to become inseparable. They're just going to they're going to be completely one and the same. So he says that the opposite of digital dualism is actually augmented reality. And he's a researcher at Snapchat right now. So I think the whole, this motion with Snapchat where people like take a 360, that's like a desperate cry for VR. You know, it's like they don't know that they want to just share that moment in VR, but they do. Yeah, they totally do. So I'm really excited about it. If somebody brought Nathan Jurgensen up at a party, I would be like pumped.
I guess the question I would hope you ask is the music industry dead? And I would give me an opportunity to say it's not. You just need to be a multifaceted artist that uses these technologies. You know, streaming is not the devil. It has a lot of data in it that we can use for booking shows places or using virtual reality, composing. There's more than just selling records these days. And you know, although it seems like a desperate cry in the media, it really isn't. You just have to diversify.
Excellent. So quick technical question. How many minutes do I have before someone punches me in the face?
I think you've got 21
Punch
minutes.
you right now.
Oh, great. That's
20
great.
minutes. And I'll run a mic around too, so maybe I can grab it.
Great. Time is passing more slowly than I thought. Cool. Here I want to open up for some questions. There are some rules here that I just want to talk through. So first, the person asking the question, please use no more than 2 sentences, and please restrict your own bio data. We all are nerds, and we're all excited to hear what you do, but let's keep the what you do aspect maybe for the cocktail chatter and for the 1 beer we have left. Please pose a question to the panel broadly. I will then repeat the question, and then we can talk about it. Is that fair? Okay, let's do it. Hi.
Hey. So, market analysts have shown that you can't just capture that nerd money. This has to go, my mom has to want to buy this. Recently there was a kerfluffle about price point. So who wants to speak on the units that you've actually used and that cross section of price, and which one are you wanting to endorse now that there's 4 or 5 of them out there?
So there's first bonus points for using the word kerfluffle. Give it up for kerfluffle. Yeah. So the question, if I might sort of broadly restate it, and then I'll pass the mic. This question is sort of a value, right? How do we articulate the value and respective price points of these various platforms? What platforms do we maybe value more than others? Yeah.
So I own a Samsung Gear VR, and I brought it to Thanksgiving. It was a huge hit. I'd say for the price point, the Samsung Gear VR is probably the best that you can get right now. It's compatible with your 6S or Plus Samsung phone, and then you can get the headset for $99. Now, if you want to go fancy, the HTC Vive is on pre-order, and that seems like the best of the best as it stands, but you're looking at a hefty investment. So I guess it depends on if you want to spend $1,300 or if you want to spend $100. You definitely have like a different experience, but for your price point, I'd say the Samsung Gear VR.
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to use pretty much every major VR device out there, and I think for the masses, the people who are going to start using it right away, it's going to be Google Cardboard. You know, we have a local company called Ion VR that's building a headset. It's going to be stuff that you use your cell phone, your pre-existing technology inside of, and that provides a decent virtual reality experience. But as we all know, computer pricing and all these things change rapidly. The biggest hurdle for mass, the biggest hurdle for mass adoption of virtual reality is going to be GPU processing and our ability to kind of utilize the graphics processing units more effectively. So whether that's rendering things that are within your field of view very sharply and then kind of pulling back on everything else. So I think that's going to be a real game changer. Right now, if you were to ask me what VR headset do I buy, I'd say get either a Google Cardboard or a Samsung Gear VR. And in a few years, your $500 computer will run the $200 Oculus, you know. So that's coming, but you know, it's still very early.
Just to add to that real quick, you know, Google Cardboard right now you got 5 million plus consumers, so that's going up to 10 million Google Cardboard consumers. Gear VR is giving it free with every S7, so that's about 3 million consumers. But then there's also the PlayStation VR, which hooks up to your existing PlayStation. There's 35 to 40 million PlayStations already in living rooms, so all you got to do is buy the $399, I think, is the PSVR headset. So with the PSVR headset, you get the PC, not quite, but you get a lot more PC quality VR experience as compared to the Google Cardboard or the Gear VR. So mobile VR is rad though, because it's completely mobile. I can walk all around, and but PlayStation VR at $399 is probably going to be the largest consumer reach as far as a games, what they call like games VR, which is in the same category. The other devices are the HTC Vive and the Oculus, which have to hook up to like a $1,500 gaming rig. So PSVR is going to be a huge, I believe, is going to be a huge reaching consumer device that's kind of in the middle between mobile VR and the super high end. Right. I believe it was previously called Project Morpheus.
So one of the biggest things is to actually have people, general population. Now, if you guys have interest, probably most of you have tried it in some form or another, but for the most part, most people have not. So in the future, and I'm talking about within next year, we're gonna have advertisements for, you can go take a car test drive and you get a free virtual reality headset. You can walk through a trade show and you'll come out with 2 or 3 or 4 headsets that are folded up. You can put them together and experience it. That's kind of the entry level to get people excited about it, but it needs to be a good experience, both from the cardboard all the way up to the Vive or the Sony product. We've had the pleasure, just like with Jay, of testing a number of different cardboard headsets and the plastic cardboards and the rubber cardboards and the Gear VRs and the Oculus. And there's a couple out there that are actually a pretty good experience for $6, $7, $8. And then there's some that are just plain horrible and you wouldn't want to use them. But getting the experience in people's hands, in the general population, that's going to be the big thing. And whether it's at the entry level or if somebody gives them, they buy a phone, they get a Gear VR, which is a cool deal, it's all good.
To be honest, I really like everything except cardboard. I like all the other. One headset, I think the coolest headset I've ever tried is the Fove, which I don't know if you guys have ever tried that. It's a Japanese company, and they're doing eye tracking within the headset, so you can actually play a game with your eyes by like moving them. It's pretty phenomenal. But yeah, I like all of the ones that enable real time room scale experiences. So Vive, Oculus, Sony.
I'd have to champion cardboard for a couple of reasons. Merch is a huge revenue source for musicians. I can brand a Google Cardboard with Ben's name on it and with our app on it. It's relatively low price point, so I can show people, especially people who come to concerts, usually aren't there for a VR experience. So if I can grab their attention and then give them something that's $20, $25 right in line with a t-shirt, it creates a customer and also gets us back in their world for re-listens. And so I think it's just a very easy entry-level way to experience it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the audience? Again, 1 or 2 sentences, bonus points for using the word kerfuffle.
Sorry, no kerfuffle in the sentence. So what are for remote VR, what are the network requirements in terms of latency and bandwidth needs to ensure you can have sort of remote recovery meetings, or folks with disability can actually get access to this hardware and applications?
As far as the exact network requirements, I didn't test it out that much, but on 3G, I can do a 2-player multiplayer experience that has voice over IP through the app as well. So that's using up a network. That's using up a significant amount of the network as well. And the thing is, the way you really render that in 3D isn't that network intensive. You just basically say go from vector A to vector B, and what happens as far as the 2 players walking is all client side. The animations and everything like that is client side. So it's pretty lightweight. For my solution, I used a multiplayer service called Photon, and I used Photon to handle both my voice over IP and all my transform movements. And so now it's only 2 players. I haven't tested up to 30 players on like a 3G cell phone network, but on 3G we can do 2 players with voice over IP with full head tracking of the 2 people and location movement. So you can do a lot. I don't have the exact numbers.
In other news, the future is bonkers. Other questions?
So here's the conundrum. I'm hoping to get word points there. But here's the question I have. So I've experienced a lot of different VR, and I see that one problem that keeps coming up is how to create communal audience experiences. Again, with theater, we were able to come up with the idea of people on the stage, an audience watches it. In cinema, similar, black box, here's the screen. How are we going to be able to bring kind of like a group of people to experience VR at once without it feeling too much like maybe like a line?
Sure. So maybe the question is like, how do we reform a notion of the public or of community in a virtual space? And I think totally conundrum is worth $1 or $2.
Yeah, so anyone ever played Second Life, right? Like, there's a couple of ways that this can happen, I think. One is that creating shared virtual reality environments is going to be important for a lot of different things, whether it's sharing experiences, like all getting together in a virtual movie theater and watching a movie together and having our avatars represent us, or allowing people who have who are immobile to join us in those spaces and have complete freedom to move about and to experience life. So I think we'll be creating communal experiences, and the tools are starting to be developed. Amazon recently released their own gaming engine. It's yet to be seen how successful that is, but the underlying structure and the reason they created that gaming engine was because they want to sell their server services, and they want people to create community experiences that can be shared. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot of virtual reality experiences where you're out exploring space, going to a movie theater together, or just going for a walk in the park together in VR.
There actually is a VR cinema that just launched. Was it Netherlands? I think it was. So that exists. I actually wrote an article on this recently. I think what is going to really sell virtual reality, it's not going to be real estate, it's not going to be porn, it's not going to be a lot of these like subsectors that are emerging. I think it's going to be social media. And I think once, and that's how the phone became so, the internet became so popular. It wasn't search engines, wasn't web pages, it was social media that really drove people to adopt the internet. And so I think for virtual reality, having really solid platforms where you can go and engage with the people that you love or you don't love and want to get to know, I think that that's going to really be what sells it. So I don't know what that looks like. There's alt space VR where you can have your avatar interact with other avatars. I think that is the just infantile seed of what we're about to see. So if any of you want to build a social media platform, you're about to make a lot of money. So get on it.
One cool thing, the Oculus, I think it's live. It might be in beta still, but I think it's live now. Oculus has a where like 5 people can get together, and you're represented by a 3D avatar, of course, in VR. But and who knows if it'll stick? But it's kind of cool where 5 people can get together in a theater, in a VR theater. And they can all watch YouTube videos together, for example. And again, it has the voice over IP there, so you get, you never could really, in the past, people would never really get together, like 5 people together and watch YouTube videos, but you got billions of people out there watching YouTube on their phone or by themselves. So a new way people are watching YouTube is maybe, and who knows if it sticks or not, but is in VR, with 5 avatars, and you can kind of talk about the videos you're watching, and then at the same time look up at the screen and watch YouTube videos. So that's something that may or may not stick. That's kind of a different way to watch YouTube.
But it also relies on kind of an old school metaphor of spectatorship, right? So like we're recreating a theater in virtual space. So on one hand, it seems like we're trying to reinvent the metaphor of being in public together,
Well, I think that's a direct result of technology from you, right? Like, we don't know what those spaces look like yet. Those virtual reality experiences that have no reference to reality. It's kind of like the iPhone, right? When the iPhone came out, they were using this style of design that was very much like, oh, that looks like a journal. I'm going to click there and it looks like a journal. But now we've started moving away from that, right? Because the technology has developed its own language. So I think when that happens in VR, we'll start moving away from creating experiences we already have and start creating really new experiences. But I don't know if any of us know what those really look like.
So let's have one more question, and then we're punching in the face.
So we were talking earlier about some of the business and industries that could be negatively impacted by VR, but we also said that they could have potential opportunities with VR. What would you say some of those opportunities are?
That's a great question to end on. Opportunities for, the world by way of VR.
I think it's the world. No, frankly, if you think about almost every industry out there, every type of entertainment, the gaming industry, everything can benefit from a better connection to that particular industry. So to me, it's the world. Let's just put it out there and say it up front. It has that potential. Now, we have to make it happen. We have to do best practices. We have to do a good job of creating content. We have to manage the hardware and make sure that people have a good experience. But go 10 years in the future, it's the world.
I'll throw just a couple of quick examples out. Like watching a boxing fight is pay-per-view is way better if I can just buy the VR and it's at the front row seat and I put my VR headset on. Again, you watch fights with your friends, so we need to figure out the social aspect, but having that front row seat in VR is a lot cooler than watching the flat screen pay-per-view. So that also applies to live concerts, and I've heard really, I've never done this personally, I want to, but I've heard really good results from VR in elderly homes, because people get to experience things like the Grand Canyon that they just haven't seen for 10 years. They've been looking at a little tiny TV in their room. So for healthcare, I've heard about Google Cardboard being used to help save, doctors using it for different medical reasons, and education can use it, because let's say you do an online class, and what if you did an online class in VR where you physically had a presence and your head's being tracked, and now it's not just like, well, I'm gonna watch a YouTube video on the side while I kind of do my online class. It's like, no, I'm in a classroom and I kind of have to look up here, because if I'm looking down like this the whole time, people in VR see where my head is. So a VR classroom is way more powerful than an online classroom. Yeah, business meetings, it's over a conference call. If we could all just join in VR, and hand motions and head and my body language was translated in a conversation, that's more powerful than a conference call. So the world is a great answer.
Yeah, so just to add to that, they're right, it's going to change the world. But how it's going to change the world is really up to you, because when Boise Virtual Reality first started, we got out into the community, we started demoing this technology. One of my favorite moments was when the teacher would pull off the Google Cardboard and go, I can take my class on the field trip anywhere. Or when the art historian said, Jay, we've got this building that belongs to a very prominent Boise artist that we're refurbishing. Can we come capture it now? And can we capture it in the future, so future students can come back and see it? So really, the technology is right now, it's so new that if any of you have an idea about the ways that the technology could be used, the thing that you're passionate about, this technology can apply to, start working on that, start building it, because it is the world, but it's a world that you're going to decide, how this technology is utilized and what you're going to build with it. So please get out and make content.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and cap it, if it's okay. Thank you so much, Cindy, for moderating, and thank you, panelists, for coming. Some of you traveled far and wide to be here, and we're really grateful. Like they said, experiencing virtual reality is crucial. A lot of what we talked about today may not make sense unless you just stick it on and do it. We have provided these experiences. DTX has been wonderful enough to donate their Oculus Rift. That is downstairs. Please go try it. It's Orion. It's an amazing interactive experience. And then Boise Virtual Reality Project and Armcassis have been generous enough to offer up their Oculus Rift, which you can experience over at Trailhead. And then lastly, if you want to hear more about storytelling in VR, there is a film being premiered Sunday, 11:30, and first 20 attendees get a Google Cardboard, which obviously there's mixed feelings about the cardboard. You can decide for yourself. It is lunchtime. Don't eat us, go eat food. Thank you so much for being a part.